San Francisco is about to lose control of its own neighborhoods, not to developers, not to landlords, to Sacramento. By January 31st, 2026, if the city hadn't passed a massive rezoning plan, the state would have stepped in. And I'm not talking about a slap on the wrist. I'm talking about the builder's remedy, a provision that lets developers build anything, any height, anywhere in the city with almost no local input. Imagine a 19-story tower going up on your block and your city can't say no. That actually has happened in Beverly Hills. It's about to happen here in San Francisco. But on December 12th, Mayor Leary signed the family zoning plan into law. It's the biggest change to San Francisco's zoning in over 100 years, and it fundamentally transforms what could be built across 60% of the city. So in this video, I'm breaking down exactly what changed, which neighborhoods are affected, and what you can now build on your property, and what this actually means if you're a homeowner, a buyer, or just curious about where San Francisco is headed. I'm Leung from Own Real Estate. I lived in 5 different neighborhoods in San Francisco for over a decade: Chinatown, the Bayview, Portola, and spent time in Sunset and the Marina. And this policy, it's going to reshape the real estate conversations I have for the next decade and into the future. Let's get into it. So let's start with the why. Why did San Francisco have to do this? It comes down to one number: 82,069. That's how many housing units the state says San Francisco needs a plan for by 2031. It's called our RHNA allocation, basically the state's way of saying you need to zone for this much housing or else. And the number is almost triple what the previous cycle required. Now, San Francisco's existing zoning couldn't accommodate about 36,000 of those units. The city was short. And under state law, that shortfall triggered a mandatory rezoning deadline for January 31st. If you miss the deadline, 2 things happen. First, San Francisco loses roughly $100 million a year in state funding. Money for affordable housing, money for transit, money for street repairs, totally gone. Second, and this is the big one, the city loses local zoning control entirely. Under California's Housing Accountability Act, when a city is out of compliance, developers can invoke something called the builder's remedy. Here's what it means. A developer can propose a project at any height, any density, anywhere in a city, as long as 20% of the units are affordable. The city can only apply basic health and safety codes. They cannot say that's too tall or that doesn't fit the neighborhood. They're basically having to approve it. Beverly Hills found this out the hard way. They've been out of compliance since 2024. A developer proposed a 19-story building where only 5 stories were allowed. The city had to approve it. San Francisco was staring down the same future. Imagine that happening in the Sunset, Portola, or Pacific Heights, or the Marina. So the city had a choice: create your own rezoning plan with local input and local priorities, or let Sacramento and developers do it for you. They chose option 1, and the result is the family zoning plan. So what actually changed? Let me walk you through neighborhood by neighborhood, because this affects different parts of the city very differently. First, the big picture. This plan primarily affects the northern and western parts of San Francisco, areas the state designates as housing opportunity areas. These are neighborhoods with good schools, access to parks, lower pollution, higher incomes, places like the Sunset, Richmond, Marina, Pacific Heights, Noe Valley, to name a few. Why these areas? Because historically, these have been zoned almost exclusively for single-family homes. Over the past 15 years, only 10% of San Francisco's new housing has been built in the western and northern neighborhoods, even though they cover more than 50% of the city's land. The state's position is this: if you want inclusive communities, you need to allow housing in well-resourced neighborhoods, not just concentrate all of them in the density of Mission and Soma. So here's what's now allowed. On most residential blocks, the streets lined with single-family homes, the height limits stay the same, usually 40 feet. But here's the change. You can now build up to 4 units on any lot, 6 units on corner lots, and within the same building envelope. The plan eliminated the old 1 house per lot restriction that covered 38% of San Francisco's private land. Near commercial streets, within about half a block of neighborhood shopping areas, you can now go up to 50 to 65 feet. That's 5 to 6 stories tall. On the main east-west commercial corridors, think Clement Street, California Street, Balboa Street, buildings can now reach 65 feet. On the western side transit corridors, Judah, Noriega, Taravel, and the streets that follow Muni lines, you're looking at 85 feet. That's 8 stories. And at major intersections and transit hubs, the heights get dramatic. Venice and Gary, for example, you can now see buildings up to 650 feet. That's roughly 65 stories. Let me give you some specific examples so you can picture this. The Sunset District. Most residential blocks stay at 40 feet, but you can now build a fourplex instead of a single-family home. Walk over to Noriega Street near the N Judah, buildings can go up to 85 feet. At the intersections with major cross streets, even taller. The Richmond. The same story on residential blocks, 40 feet, but multi-family unit buildings are now allowed. Clement Street can see 65-foot buildings. Gary Boulevard through the Richmond allows for 85-foot along the corridor, taller at the nodes. The Marina, height limits increase along Chestnut Street and Lombard. The residential side streets can now have multi-family unit buildings with existing height limits. Pacific Heights, the commercial strips along Fillmore and Union can go higher. The mansions on the hills, the height limits stay, but theoretically someone can add units to their property if they wanted to. In total, about 96,000 parcels are affected across the whole city. Now here's the practical question everyone is asking. What does this mean for my property? If you own a single-family home in an affected area, you now have options you didn't have before. Under the old zoning, your property was restricted to one home, period. If you wanted to add an ADU, you could do that, but building a duplex or a triplex on your lot, not allowed. Now, on most lots, you can build up to 4 units. Corner lots can go up to 6 units. And if you're on or near a commercial corridor, the possibility is even greater. Does this mean developers are going to knock on your door tomorrow trying to buy your house? Probably not. At least not on most residential streets. Here's why. The economics of tearing down a single-family home to build a fourplex are still challenging. Construction costs in San Francisco are among the highest in the country. Most small residential lots don't pencil out for redevelopment unless the existing home is in very poor condition or the lot is unusually large. The city's own projections estimate that over the next 20 years, this rezoning will produce somewhere between 14,000 and 18,000 new units. That's a lot, but it's also spread across 2 decades and 96,000 parcels. So the transformation will be gradual. Where you will see development is along corridors of Gary, Irving, Taravel, Clement, and Judah. Properties on these commercial streets, especially larger lots, parking lots, and underutilized buildings are now significantly more valuable because of what could be built. If you own a commercial property or a large lot on one of these corridors, your development potential just increased substantially. For property values more broadly, the research is mixed but generally positive. UC Berkeley's Tenor Center notes that when you allow more development on a parcel, the land value typically increases because of its new potential. However, when you upzone broadly like San Francisco just did, the effect gets spread out. There are now lots of places to build, which moderates the premium any single property commands. The city economist's projections suggest this plan could actually lower rents by $75 to $125 per month over time and lower condo prices by $25,000 to $40,000 compared to a no-action scenario. More supply, more options, less pressure on prices, and no Sacramento in San Francisco making decisions. Now let's talk about what this means if you're looking to buy in San Francisco. First, the opportunity. Areas that have been static for decades are going to start changing. The Sunset and Richmond in particular have been frozen in time compared to eastern neighborhoods. That's going to shift. If you're buying a single-family home, know that your neighbors might actually have the option to build more units. That 40-foot height limit isn't going away, but the single-family only character is no longer protected by law. For some buyers, that's a concern. For others, it's actually a feature. You're buying into a neighborhood that's going to get more services, more retail, and more life as density increases. If you're an investor or thinking long-term, pay attention to parcels on the commercial corridors at major intersections. Properties near transit hubs, especially BART and Muni metro stations, have the highest development potential under the new rules. Also pay attention to opportunity sites, lots larger than 8,000 square feet. These can now go up to 6 stories even off main corridors. In a city of small lots, these larger parcels are rare and now much more valuable. One thing I'm telling buyers right now, factor in the neighborhood's trajectory, not the current state. The Sunset today is mostly single-family homes and neighborhood shops. The Sunset in 15 years might have 8-story apartment buildings along Taravel and Noriega. That's not good or bad, it's just the direction things are headed. Let me give you a reality check on timing, because I think there's some misunderstanding about how fast this will actually change the city. The law took effect January 2026, but that doesn't mean construction starts tomorrow. Building in San Francisco is still expensive. Interest rates are still elevated, but not as high as they've been over the last 3 years. Construction costs are still among the highest in the nation. And that permitting process, while improving, is still very complex. The city's most optimistic projections show about 15,000 units over 20 years from this rezoning. That's roughly 750 units per year directly attributable to the new zoning. For context, San Francisco has been averaging about 3,000 to 5,000 total units per year across the entire city. So this will matter. It will change neighborhoods, but it's not going to happen overnight. What you'll likely see first is development on the low-hanging fruit, vacant lots, parking lots, and underutilized commercial properties along those corridors. Those projects are already being planned. The single-family neighborhood blocks, most of the homes will stay exactly the way they have been for years, maybe decades. The economics don't just yet support tearing down a functional home to build a fourplex in most cases. Where things get more interesting is on corner lots and larger parcels in residential areas. A 6-unit building on a corner lot in the Sunset might pencil out, especially if the existing home is older or needs significant work anyways. And there's another factor. As existing homeowners age or decide to sell, some will sell to developers who will see the new potential. That's a slow process, but over 20 years, it adds up. I should mention this isn't over. The plan passed 7-4 at the Board of Supervisors, and not everyone is happy. A coalition called Neighborhoods United San Francisco, along with a group called Small Business Forward, has already filed a lawsuit challenging the plan on environmental review grounds. They argue the city didn't adequately study the impacts of building up to 350 feet taller than previously analyzed. There's also talk of a ballot measure in 2026 to overturn the plan. My take? The lawsuit faces an uphill battle because the state deadline created genuine urgency, and the courts have generally been deferential to cities trying to comply with housing law. But it's worth watching. The ballot measure is harder to predict. San Francisco voters are complicated. They approved Prop A in 2024, providing $300 million for affordable homes, but they also rejected pro-housing measures in the past. Now, if the opponents can frame this as Sacramento forcing change on local neighborhoods, they might find traction. For now, though, the plan is law, and developers and property owners are already making decisions based on it. So let me bring this back to the big picture. San Francisco had a choice. Lose control to Sacramento and face chaotic, developer-driven density everywhere, or create its own plan that concentrates growth along transit corridors and commercial streets while protecting most residential blocks. They chose the second option, and whatever you think about politics, it means San Francisco, not the state, gets to shape how these neighborhoods evolve. Is it perfect? No. The city's own projections suggest it won't produce enough housing to fulfill meeting the state requirement. There are legitimate concerns about infrastructure, about displacement, about neighborhood character. But here's what I know from working in this market every day. San Francisco's housing shortage is real. The pressure on prices and rents is real. And doing nothing wasn't an option. This plan allows for more housing in neighborhoods that have been closed off for new construction for generations. It keeps decision-making local. It gives property owners options that they didn't have before. Whether that's a good thing depends on your perspective, but it's the reality we're now living in and moving forward in. For many people that have lived in San Francisco for generations, they see this change as threatening or something that they don't look forward to. Many people have already moved out of the city and voted by moving their feet to somewhere else. If you have questions about how this affects a specific property or neighborhood, whether you're thinking about buying, selling, or just trying to understand what's happening around you, I'm happy to help. You can email me at hello@theownteam.com or drop a comment below. I'll put links in the description to the city's interactive zoning map so you can look at your specific address, plus official planning documents if you want to dig deeper. You can also reach out to us with specific questions about the planning map or your property in general as well. Now, if you found this video helpful, consider subscribing. We create weekly videos about the Bay Area's real estate market, comparing different neighborhoods, and things that are coming to town. Market updates, neighborhood guides, and policy changes like this that affect your biggest investment. What do you think about the family zoning plan? Are you for it, against it, or somewhere in between? If you're against it, would you like Sacramento and a state to take over what the city builds? Let me know in comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.